This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1.
Talking to a new employee called Penny. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5 on pages 2 and 3. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Come in. Good morning, it's,
Penny, man.
Oh, yes. Penny, do sit down. Now, I know a lot of things emerged during your interview last week, but I thought it was worth going over the essential stuff again.
Yes, absolutely. That'll be very helpful.
The interview took place last week, so the letter B has been circled. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Come in. Good morning, it's,
Penny, man.
Oh, yes. Penny, do sit down. Now, I know a lot of things emerged during your interview last week, but I thought it was worth going over the essential stuff again.
Yes, absolutely. That'll be very helpful.
The first thing is that, given your interest in fashions, we've decided to put you in the dress department.
Oh, that's great. Is that next to the children's section?
Yes. Now, we've given the section a new name, actually. From next week, it's going to be called the Young Set.
Youngster.
No, 2 words. The Young Set.
Right. Oh, sorry.
Now, you'll be required to work a 5.5-day week. We're closed on Wednesday afternoon, and Sunday, of course.
Do we get overtime for Saturday?
Well, actually, we used to give an extra $2 an hour, but then we decided to make it a flat rate of $6.50 an hour.
Okay, fine. And the actual hours?
9 to 5, with an hour for lunch and 15-minute coffee breaks.
And what about holidays?
Well, it's 3 weeks in the first year, and that rises to 4 weeks in your 3rd year with us. Now, we do give you on-the-job training, which we conduct during normal hours, so you'll be paid for that.
Which day?
It's on the first Tuesday of every month.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10 on page 3. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, in addition to your basic pay, I should explain that you're entitled to some staff perks, which our assistants do find a valuable benefit.
Do we get a discount?
That's right, 25% off everything in the store, although we do make an exception for sale goods, which I'm afraid have no discount.
Yeah, fine. And I was wondering about pension arrangements.
You get a good company pension, which our personnel manager will be able to explain to you in detail. She's in room 12. Worth going along to see her.
And who will I be working under? Mr. Appleby?
The manager of your section is Mrs. Waddell. That's Waddell.
Mrs. Waddell. Okay. And apart from serving the customers, will I have any other duties?
Good question. We do ask you to do the window dressing.
Oh, I'll enjoy that.
And one of the biggest worries in the boutique is shoplifters, so you have to check for them.
Will I receive training on that?
Yes, certainly. That'll be one of the sessions next month. Oh, and we'll be asking you to check stock.
Right. Yes, of course. And is there a particular dress code in the shop?
Right, well, we're quite flexible. But what we do is ask you to wear a black skirt, and the shop will give you a red blouse. We'll also give you a name badge, which you must wear all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Is there anything else you'd like to ask me?
No, that's very comprehensive. Thank you.
Good. So we'll see you on Monday.
Yes. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You're going to hear a talk by a tour guide about the local history of Harbour Town. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the historic downtown area of Harbour Town. I'm going to give a presentation on the history of the area before I let you all go. There's great weather today, so I'll try to keep this short. So, from this room, you can see most all of the historic area. This intersection is where the city was first founded, about 350 years ago. The San Gabriel River is wide and deep, and it was an excellent waterway for the movement of goods. Harbour Town used to produce lots of beef and oranges. Before the city grew, there was lots of open land for grazing and planting fruit trees. They traded these products with other towns and cities. The weather in this region is excellent for growing oranges because there are warm summers and mild winters. Citrus fruits can't survive in places where there is severe frost. At the height of citrus cultivation, there were over 500 orchards growing citrus fruit. Unfortunately, this fertile land also had lots of oil underneath it. In the rest of the country, new technology required the energy found in fossil fuels. After the first oil wells were tapped, agriculture gradually gave way to industry. The farms, orchards, and ranches that surrounded the town were replaced by new factories, cities, and roads. There is very little agriculture in the region these days, and certainly no cattle. The oil eventually ran out, of course, but other industries such as aerospace and entertainment were established. Well, that's a brief history of Harbour Town. You can use one of the computer terminals available in the main office if you want more information.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
I will highlight some of the sites here just to give you an idea of what we have in the historic center of Harbour Town. You can then explore the area as you please. So, I've already mentioned the intersection where the city was first founded. The main east-west street is called Sunset Road, and the main north-south street is called Santa Monica Avenue. The central office we are in right now is at the northernmost end of Santa Monica Avenue. There are public restrooms here, as well as computer terminals that connect to the internet. Across from the central office is the fruit market. At its height, people from all over the country came to buy fruit from the distributors there. If you travel south from the market and go past the intersection, you will see the Ranch Museum. Here you can learn about the old ranching lifestyle that was such a hallmark of our region. Now, going back to the intersection, if you go west of Santa Monica Avenue, you will find Old City Hall. It is an excellent example of the architecture of the time. In the opposite direction, going east of the main intersection, you can see Sunny Movie Studios. They don't make movies there now, of course, but it was the first company to make movies in our region. Also, the subway station is accessible from all four corners of the intersection. If you didn't take the bus here today, I am sure that is where you came from. Well, thanks again, and I hope you enjoy your visit to the historic area of Harbour Town.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear a tutor and some students discussing choosing courses at a college. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
As you know, this week you choose your modules for the first year of study. So this introductory meeting is aimed at helping you make informed choices. I think the best way to do this is on a question and answer basis. So who'd like to start? Pat.
Yes. There's something I've been wondering about. Will my choice affect my career opportunities?
Well, for most students, the choice of Level 1 modules won't be crucial in terms of a later career. In fact, many graduate-level jobs will accept graduates from a range of degree courses. Employers will often be at least as interested in how well a student has performed academically and how the whole experience of university has developed the student as a person, as in the detail of the course options chosen. Selecting modules that will interest you and in which you think you will be particularly successful is therefore also likely to make good sense in career terms. On certain degree courses, though, module choice can be important. This applies mainly to vocational courses, where the degree confers an accredited professional training as well as university education. Usually the modules students are required to take will include all those needed to meet those professional requirements. Your academic department, in this case chemical and process engineering, and the university's career service will be able to advise you, and will be pleased to help you sort out anything you're not certain about.
Right.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
I'd like to ask a few things about the Applied Chemical Engineering module.
Fine. What would you like to know?
Well, Apart from the work on practical engineering, what other topics are covered?
Some that might surprise you. One that students always seem to like includes interviewing techniques, presentation skills, and producing written reports.
They sound interesting. How are they taught?
Through lectures, practical classes, and personal tutorials. Applied chemical engineering lasts all year, of course, so there's plenty of time.
And what about assessment?
Through project work, usually, or dissertation. Not exams as such.
Is that the same for the information technology part of the module?
Yes, things like word processing and learning to create spreadsheets are tested in a similar way on this module.
That's not the case in some other modules, is it?
No, it isn't. Are you thinking of any in particular?
Yes, I'm considering doing fluid mechanics.
Ah.
The work on flow analysis looks interesting and I like the look of some of the other topics too. So, how is that module tested?
That's one of those which still uses written exams. The sit-down, formal type, I'm afraid.
Oh, that doesn't matter. I quite like that kind, as it happens.
Pat, you've got a question.
Yes. I was wondering about Science 1 in chemical engineering. How is that organised? It's a bit different from other modules, isn't it?
Yes, it aims to give the necessary basis of physics and biology for those students who haven't studied the relevant subjects at A-level or equivalent. In practice, it means that students who have already studied physics are excused the physics lectures, while those who've done biology are exempt from attending the biology lectures. In the second part of the module, you're assessed on your project work in one of those subjects.
And does the teaching approach differ too?
Yes, particularly in one respect. You're encouraged to learn by working out the solutions to problems for yourself.
I like the sound of that.
OK. Anything else?
Yes, I believe it's possible to do a modern language as part of the course. Can you tell me a bit about the Spanish 1A module?
Certainly. The main emphasis in 1A is on understanding and speaking, but students also learn to carry out some straightforward reading and writing tasks. Basic aspects of grammar are also introduced and practiced. The module comprises 36 hours of class contact, mainly in tutorial groups of 16 to 20, and students are expected to do approximately 64 hours of private study.
It sounds interesting. I did some Spanish at the Cervantes Institute last year. Passed an exam, in fact.
Ah, I'm afraid that means you can't do 1A.
Oh.
The regulations say this module may not be taken by students with a qualification in Spanish, though you could do 1B.
That is the end of part 3. Now turns to part 4.
You are going to hear a lecturer giving a talk on archaeology. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 33. Many thanks for inviting me along today to talk to you about the results of some very interesting recent archaeological research. The saying, "you are what you eat," is often applied to present-day dietary advice. Certainly, our bodies will show evidence of whether we eat healthily or live on fast food and takeaways. This can be particularly useful in archaeological research. Through a careful analysis of the ancient bones of our ancestors, we can tell a great deal about their diet and the way they lived. I'd like to talk to you today about some research into the early settlers of some remote tropical islands in the Pacific. When these people travelled to these new lands 3,000 years ago, they had to bring along all the resources they needed for survival, including food, plants and animals from their original homes. One such group were the Lapita people, who were early settlers of remote Oceania, several islands in the Pacific. When the Lapita set sail for the island Vanuatu, they brought with them domestic animals and crop plants. This allowed them to settle in an area where no humans had previously lived and that had limited natural resources. Archaeologists have been keen to discover to what extent these settlers and their domestic animals relied on the resources they'd brought with them compared to the native plants and animals they found on the island. Before you hear more of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 37. Now listen and answer questions 34 to 37. In order to try and understand the diet and lives of the Lapita people, archaeologists analysed the chemical composition of the bones of 50 adults excavated from the Lapita cemetery on Efate Island, Vanuatu. Depending on what we eat, we consume varying amounts of carbon, nitrogen and sulphur. As these chemical elements are ultimately deposited in our bones, the amounts or ratios of each one can provide a sort of dietary signature. For instance, plants incorporate nitrogen into their tissues, and as animals eat plants and other animals, nitrogen builds up in their own system. The presence of different ratios of chemical elements may show whether a human or an animal ate plants, animals, or both. Carbon and sulphur ratios offer another clue to diet. Carbon ratios, for example, differ between land and water organisms, as do sulphur ratios, the values of which are much higher in aquatic organisms compared to land-based organisms. As well as examining the settlers' bones, scientists carried out a comprehensive analysis of the chemical elements found in the settlers' likely food sources. This included modern and ancient plants and animals. They found that early Lapita inhabitants of Vanuatu may have searched for food rather than relying entirely on food they'd grown themselves during the early stages of colonization. In the longer term, they probably did grow and consume food from the resources they'd brought with them, but early on, they appear to have relied as much on a mixture of fish, marine turtles and fruit bats, as well as their own domestic land animals. Before you hear more of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 38 to 39. Now listen and answer questions 38 to 39. The archaeologists believe that this analysis of diet may also provide clues to the culture of the settlers. For one thing, males had much higher nitrogen levels compared to females, which indicates greater access to meat. This difference in food consumption may support the hypothesis that Lapita societies were ranked in some way, or it may suggest dietary differences associated with the work people were involved in. Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at question 40. Now listen and answer question 40. Additionally, the archaeologists analysed ancient pig and chicken bones and found that carbon levels in the settlers' domestic animals indicated that they were eating a diet mainly of plants. However, their nitrogen levels indicate that they may also have roamed freely, eating food such as insects. This would have allowed the Lapita people to keep food resources that were in short supply for themselves, rather than feeding them to their domestic animals.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.